Gucci.
Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore, joined as always by
Anthony Ray Bench.
And we have a very special guest on today's podcast, Bo Burnham, writer, director, comedian. Bo Burnham.
Fantastic fucking comedian. I love this guy.
If you have not seen his Netflix specials, they're not your traditional stand-up comedy. Bo Burnham's stand-up comedy he's also a musician.
Yeah.
Right? So his stand-up comedy is filled with there are musical comedians, right? It's filled with music, but it's not just musical. It's also like almost a performance art, because he does a whole show where he's sometimes responding to sort of a disembodied voice up in the sky, in addition to including rap. And all this sounds terrible, right? Like a buffet that you shouldn't be eating. But the way that Bo orchestrates it and puts it all together, just go on Netflix, look up Bo Burnham, or look up clips on YouTube, which is where actually Bo Burnham came from.
Yeah, and break.com as well.
Yeah, he was just uploading sort of goofy stuff onto YouTube for his family.
Yeah.
And then suddenly that's blew up as a comedian. He's also very young. He was born in 1990.
Yeah, that's insane, and it makes me feel pathetic being 32 years old. One of my favorite things he's ever done was that song "Pandering." Have you heard it?
No, wait, no.
It makes fun of country stadium rock.
Oh,
have you seen it?
No.
Oh,
no,
dude,
I want to see it.
I'm going to share it with you.
Okay,
you
good.
are going to laugh your ass off. It's so spot on. I would describe his comedy as very highbrow.
Yeah.
And it's an English major's dream, because he's very well articulate. Like, I love him.
Yeah, well, but we're not here to really talk about his stand-up so much as we're talking about his film 8th Grade, which is a film I've seen now 3 times.
I've seen it once.
And
I can't wait to see it again.
It's so affecting. It's so, it really takes you back to those awkward moments in junior high, and I like someone, but I don't know if they like me, and I really, 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 really want the approval of this person, and that you don't know how to dress, you don't know how to talk, and not that these things change as you become an adult. I think that was the thing I related to the most in seeing 8th Grade was the fact that you don't stop feeling that way. You don't stop having those awkward feelings.
That scene where they go to the swimming party, like, I remember being at a swimming party and checking my armpits to make sure that I had, armpit hair like everybody else, because, I was worried. Like, I didn't want people to think I hadn't hit puberty yet.
Oh, God. Well, your body image is so... And again, we're talking about junior high, the time of your life in junior high. But it's not like those feelings ever go away. I feel like in some way, this film 8th Grade may be too real in capturing what it's like to experience that stage of life. I mean, it's just horribly awkward and uncomfortable. So I'm excited to talk to Bo about it. Before Bo joins us on the podcast, I do want to get in a couple plugs. We are on fire with this podcast. If you are joining us, we have had interviews recently with Boots Riley, with Lauren Greenfield from Generation Wealth, Boots Riley of Sorry to Bother You. So you're going to see the Film Threat Podcast sort of ping pong between episodes where we're getting together talking about movies, and then also having directors of some of our favorite indie films come on the show. So excited about that. And then also our expanding efforts on YouTube.
Yep.
Yes, we mentioned YouTube earlier. You can now watch and listen to the Film Threat Podcast on YouTube in celebration of our upcoming 100th episode of the Film Threat Podcast, which is going to happen in the month of August. You are going to be able to listen, see all of the episodes, all of the first 100 episodes on YouTube and all of the episodes going forward. So just look up Film Threat on YouTube or go to filmthreat.com. There's a link to our YouTube channel. Check it out, and you'll see that we're posting not the traditional trailers that other channels post, and we'll be rolling out some original content. We have a piece of original content going up this week. I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to blow up. Let's talk to Bo Burnham about 8th grade. And I'm just going to assume that you sent out a tweet saying, I'm doing the Film Threat podcast.
Yes, exactly.
I'm so excited right now. So excited right now to be doing the show.
Yeah, well, I am excited. I appreciate you having me.
Great. No, Bo Burnham, welcome to the Film Threat podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So this is an unusual situation from the standpoint of a comedian transitioning into being a writer-director. This is not a type of career path. You see a lot of comedians transition into acting.
Yeah.
And you're not in the film, although I think have I seen your face in some of the marketing? It's maybe some of the viral marketing.
Yeah,
pictures of you.
Yeah, but I'm not in the film. No, do not expect my face in the film.
And for anyone who's not seen your stand-up, I mean, there's specials on Netflix. It's not traditional stand-up comedy. It's stand-up comedy you could almost describe as performance art.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Using music. So what was that transition like? When did you decide, stand-up's great, but I want to write and direct?
I grew up doing theater, so that's what I really loved to do was like work with actors and cut scripts and stage scenes. I mean, that's what I sort of fell in love with doing, and then I sort of stumbled into stand-up, and stand-up is very singular. You're only working with yourself, only looking at yourself. So I was just tired of my own face and my own voice and having to work just alone on something. So I was just desperate to collaborate with people. And over the years, I'd been writing scripts and sort of falling in love with that. And yeah, so I was just really, I wanted to explore a subject other than myself with people other than myself. And film's like the great way to do that.
And this project started not just as, it started, Elsie's voice is obviously the voice of the film, but it started as an ensemble piece. Am I right? When you were originally developing the material?
Yeah, it's like weird because it's like, what is writing when you started off? It was more just I was writing a lot of things and I wasn't sure, like, am I going to be writing some like Altman-esque, Magnolia-esque, like big tandem narrative thing. I didn't know what I was writing. I was writing just a bunch of characters and situations, and then I found this girl in that process and then realized, like, oh, no, this is its own thing. This is all that's happening. But yeah, the initial process was, I want to write about the internet and what culture feels like to me now, so it has to be so big.
I mean, and even in your stand-up, I mean, you deal with some of this in a way, and I think your stand-up was so forward-thinking in the sense that you apologize for jokes sometimes before or after the joke, knowing that what you might say could be taken out of context or
which is
used.
Sadly kind of necessary these days.
Yeah, well, and that's part of it, I guess. But I think that's true to the way we live, and like we're just aware of the sort of timeline of our lives has. Here comes the stage. The timeline of our. Appreciate it. Keep that in. That's good. The timeline of our lives has sort of collapsed, and we're aware of the reception of the thing before we maybe even think of the thing. So like that is. Even as it's like a poking fun at maybe the cultural moment a little bit, it's also true. I just think like we're in a moment sitting here recording a podcast thinking of how this podcast is going to sound. Like this specific thing we're doing now, I think is common to sort of everyday life now, which is like there's very little difference between a recorded conversation that we're going to put out into the world and a conversation you have with your friends. Everything's recorded, everything's seen, everything is slightly performed and slightly casual. And yeah, I think that's how kids live their life and how we all live our life, that we're, before we're even getting to the thing, we're taking inventory of the thing and reacting to the thing. So I think that's what those kind of callbacks or whatever that sort of meta-ness in the show and about the jokes is. It's trying to actually get at something honest, weirdly.
Now, it's interesting. If I'm correct, the director of your comedy special is also one of the producers on.
Yeah, we co-directed the specials together.
Yeah. So was that something where you were around pitching movies and I'm going to take this film to a studio and see who's behind this? How did you make that leap where someone had the confidence in you? Because obviously, as a performer, without question. But as a writer-director, that's a different type of role. How did you, I guess, convince the powers that be that I'm the guy that, like, I wrote this, I'm also the guy that has to direct it?
Yeah. So Chris Storer, who's my producer on the movie and co-directed my specials with me, Make Happy and What, and has produced the other specials I've done with me, Chris Rock and Gerard Carmichael's, and I just trust him a lot, and like, I think it's so silly to say you directed your own comedy special. It's like, no, Chris was the one behind the monitors, like, giving notes to cameras. You know what I mean? So, like, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that I just did that. He was a huge part of that, and I trust him immensely. And he actually, I tried to sell the script in the movie, and he actually wasn't attached to it at that point. And, took 3 or 4 years to get money and wasn't getting it, and then eventually did my last special, which was Make Happy, and felt like I had enough momentum to, like, all right, maybe I can get the money for this movie finally. And A24 and Scott Rudin kind of together came to me and offered to do half each. And it was like Scott Rudin actually was like, is there someone that you want to work with? Is there someone in your life that you would love to be involved in this? And I was like, Chris. Like, I wasn't sure if, like, our little producing team would be a problem, but they were just so open, and Chris worked really well with Scott and Eli and Lila, who are the other producers on this. So that was really nice. What was really great is that I kind of came into contact with that, more intimidating, bigger, I mean, it's all relative, but more intimidating producer, studio, whatever system. And they were totally open to preserving this sort of small team that I had making my specials, which was Chris, my producer, and Andrew Wade, my cinematographer. And that was really helpful. I think they knew that, like, I think great producers also are just, like, actually attending to making sure you're comfortable, and part of your comfort isn't to be, like, necessarily surrounded with the most veteran, qualified people, but actually just people you feel good around and people you have a history with.
Now, as a first-time director, as far as, like, narrative stories go, was there a director you kind of studied and took, kind of an influence from?
Yeah, for this movie, it was a bunch. I mean, it's like more specific movies than, I love, like, Cassavetes and, Catherine Breillat and...
You mentioned Robert Altman earlier.
Yeah, I love Three Women. Or Tall Women. No, what is it? Three Women. Tall Women's the play on Broadway. I love PTA. I love him. I know it's like not cool for some reason for, I think, young people to sometimes say PTA because it's like he's just so obvious or something.
Right.
But I love his stuff, and Julia Ducournau's film Raw, and Trey Edward Schultz's film Krisha, and even like The Wrestler, and I tend to be a fan of, like, what I perceive as actors, directors. Even like PTA, who, I think a lot of people, like, obviously love his craft and everything. But I do too. But, like, I just think what he gets out of his actors, what he's able to do with actors and that's Cassavetes and Bergman and just people that I feel like have an intimate relationship with their actors and are able to get performances out of, because that's what I watch when I watch in movies. I mean, that's the 95% of what I'm watching, and that's what made me confident going into the movie. Not confident, I was of course not confident, but, like, I knew I had a long way to go technically, and I had a lot to learn from people around me, but I felt like I know what I think a good performance looks like. I know the type of performance out of kids that I want to get that I haven't seen. So that's what I was that was this. If there was any solid ground beneath my feet, it was acting.
Well, if you look at kids at this stage of life and how they're portrayed, it's Disney Channel, which is a fantasy. I mean, that's not what kids are dealing with now. I mean, the film is, 8th Grade is the most honest portrayal of kids at this stage of life. And, of course, even though I did not grow up and neither did you, but, like, that, it's so relatable. We were talking before we started recording the scene at the swimming pool when she's awkwardly going out in just, here's my body, this is the way it is now. I'm not a girl, but I'm not a woman, and now I'm gonna be. It's so awkward. We just that I mean, first of all, one of the greatest scenes in the movie, and just so relatable and so, like, why is there so few honest moments There's so many in 8th grade. I mean, it's almost jarring. Like, oh yes, we have all had to deal with those things. We didn't have cell phones or Snapchat, but we had to deal with those moments. It's just discouraging that this is the most honest portrayal, and yet. I guess I know where I'm going. I'm trying to pay you a compliment.
No, I
appreciate
it. I know. I can speak to what I'm saying, and I really appreciate it. But I mean, for me, the falsity that's in teen movies is actually like not really situational. Like sometimes, there's the Disneyfied sort of PG version of it that needs to happen. But even sometimes in the more quote unquote adult ones, like the way it feels false to me is not necessarily because like my movies. Full of cliches. It's a daughter and her father at the dinner table arguing. It's a pool party. I mean, you've seen these things. It's more like the moment to moment articulated. It's the way kids sound that always feels so fake to me. Where it feels like kids in movies tend to talk with an ability that is similar to a screenwriter's ability to write. You know what I mean? Which is like it's just not like the struggle of. The movie, it's actually in a lot of departments of the movie, it's like, how do you write someone that can't yet speak? How do you dress someone that can't yet dress themselves? I mean, you look at like sometimes like bedrooms in teen movies, and you're like, this looks like it was done by an interior decorator instead of a kid. And like, a kid's bedroom isn't actually a perfect representation of themselves. It's actually like their 7-year-old shit stacked on top of their 8-year-old shit. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a mess. Half of the stuff is random and has no sense of like space, and it's not perfectly done. Like same with their wardrobe. Like when you're doing a fitting for kids for a movie, you're actually trying to fit them for clothes that shouldn't fit them because none of their clothes fit that right. So that's what. For me, that's the sort of thing we were trying to avoid is the perfectness. And even you've seen movies, I'm sorry, or shows or whatever with kids that are losers and everyone. We've always seen The Outsider, but even The Outsider, they're like perfect outsiders, and they have like they're secret photographers that write perfect poems and talk about their. And
either that or completely over the top.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it's like. I don't know, and I don't think it's just kids. I think it extends to everybody. But like, I wanted to pursue that feeling of inarticulate, the real messiness of what it means to be a kid. The way it sounds, the way she wants to sound like kids in movies, and she doesn't, and that's like a stress for her.
Well, it's interesting. That attention to detail is like why you directed the movie. It's that. What do we say? It's come up actually a couple times. Tone management. Isn't that what the Coen brothers said? Directing is really tone management. And through those kinds of details, I mean, I think that the fact that you pay attention not just to the language, but also to the ill-fitting clothes and the, transitional nature of the things that she has in her room. I mean, that's why I think this resonates so much. And, having seen it, I mean, I've seen it 3 times, and audiences always, there are certain scenes you see audiences always really get a reaction, especially boys at that age are a problem. Right?
We're kind of assholes.
Yeah, I was. I was a problem.
Right, but like, you deal with it so well because there's one relationship, the scene we're talking about in the car, and then there's also a relationship that's perhaps more hopeful.
Yeah.
And it's maybe not a love connection, but hopeful. So how did you deal with the I think that the men are treated portrayed fairly in it, and portrayed the darkness and the light.
I don't know. It's like just trying to be honest with the type of people that she would encounter, and not necessarily mean to like, all right, I got to hit this and that and that, and like honestly, like I was like casting Gabe gender neutrally. I mean, I was going out to boys and girls for that part. And auditioning both, because for me it was just a friendship at the end, but also like friendship at that age feels like a date or whatever. It doesn't matter or whatever. It's like the line between like, okay, your friends coming over for the first time or your dates coming over for the first time feel almost identical. Everything's super high stakes there. But yeah, I think part of it too is me trying to go back and sort of look at my perspective, and I don't think I really processed at all what it meant to be a boy back then and what it also meant to be a girl and what the differences were, and that there was this sort of other way to experience 8th grade that I didn't experience. So I think part of it was doing that, and that was the movie for me. I really felt like I was going through 8th grade for the first time because her experience is different than mine. You know, I didn't want it to feel like a memory. I wanted it to feel like looking out from within that experience and not looking back on that experience.
It wasn't through nostalgia lens.
Yeah,
you know,
and like hopefully, like I'm sure people feel nostalgic, and like, you know, you see, and like when I walked into a middle school for the first time scouting, and I felt nostalgic immediately. You just like you can't help it, but yeah, I just yeah, there's yeah, it's interesting. I don't know other about exactly how the men are treated, other than like, because I didn't see it like that necessarily. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't, when I was in it, I was just trying to case by case basis treat things honestly and let the characters reveal themselves and just try to be sensitive and responsible.
Elsie, how did you find her? She is, I mean, it's incredible how she drives this entire film.
Yeah, I found a clip of her online. I was just looking up young actors, and like almost from the first clip, I was like, I think this is her before I met anybody. I was rooting for her before she came in. And then she read, and every other kid that read the part, it felt like they were pretending to be shy. And she was the one, when she read it, it felt like she was pretending to be confident, which is what it actually is about. Shyness isn't cowering in a corner and not wanting to speak. Shyness is trying to speak all the time. So it's a character that on the page could be very passive and blank, and she made it active. She made it as someone that's searching for something and wanting something. So the script was literally like dead before she read it. It was meaningless. I remember watching her audition with my girlfriend, who's a writer-director, and we were watching her tape, and my girlfriend said, like, this is the first time I've heard the words. When all the other kids read, she was doing the Being Yourself monologue, which is the first video. It's like when everyone else, I can't even hear the words, but when I'm actually hearing the meaning of the words from her, yeah, she's just incredible.
Did Elsie change the script at all, or at least change maybe some of the? Did she participate in creating some of the notebooks? I mean, just
no, not really. No, I mean, like, not as much as it appears. I mean, she was giving a technical performance. This wasn't like, you know, I don't know. There's been some like recent like street casting examples where you just like the character comes to the person, but she's performing I mean, in the script 3 years ago, it was, she's writing in her friend, you know, make more friends, make a best friend, all that stuff. And the monologues are written like, so the thing about being yourself is like, wait, I'm reading this off a piece of paper, ... okay. And now I wasn't telling her like, you forgot an you know what I mean? But it was more giving her permission to be inarticulate. But yeah, she told me all of her messages were originally on Facebook, and she told me when she read the script, no one uses Facebook anymore. So then I had Kennedy say that to her mother, and I made all the DMs be on Instagram. So like she corrected me on a few like old dusty things.
I had no idea about the Facebook thing.
And then it was dead. I know, It was so funny. And I was at Facebook headquarters, and some guy secretly told me like they're calling it at Facebook SOS Teen. For teens abandoning Facebook. The code word is like SOS Teen for the fact that teens are like really running away from Facebook right now.
But yet they're using a Facebook product with Instagram.
Exactly. Well, that's why it's fine. It's like that's why it's like, oh, you're not drinking Coke anymore. You're drinking Sprite. Like, oh, boo-hoo, you know, from the Coke people.
Now, I've heard you spoke about in the film how social media has affected us and how it's affected. I don't think we even know the effects of how social media is affecting a generation that will grow up with it, you know, pre-teen.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've talked about it in your comedy. I've seen you speak about it in other interviews. I mean, and now it's so prevalent with so many things blowing up, especially in the world of comedy with regard to social media and the costs of that. Like, do you have anything to say on that? I mean, just at least from the standpoint of like what you're trying to say in the film, and then how things are now, where I feel like we were handed this tool, didn't know what it was, and then now we're seeing its effects, you know, 10 plus years later.
Yeah, and I think well, you won't really see the effects of this for another 10 years, or you know, it's also the country's on fire, so that's a pretty big effect of it, or
Very
something.
True. Yeah.
True.
But Yeah, the movie is really not trying to be like instructive or prescriptive. It's really just trying to be descriptive. Like, for me, there's so much commentary on the internet and like not enough just actual portrayal of it. So that's what the movie's trying to do, at least, is just like portray how it feels subjectively to this kid, and then hopefully give you the tools to maybe have a conversation about it later. But my worry is that, like, in general, everyone's sort of pontificating on the internet without actually the raw information to have the conversation. And it's more like, when these kids grow up and they become social scientists in 20 years, I'll read their dissertation on the internet. But until then, it felt like my job, coming from a world of commentary, coming from a world of, wagging my finger and giving TED Talks, I was much more interested in something more granular and small, and just like, the only thing I'm actually certain of right now is how it feels to me. And I think she feels similarly to me. So this movie's just about how it feels, and hopefully just makes the audience feel stuff, and then they can take those feelings and form their own thoughts. But I don't want the movie to form thoughts, if that makes sense.
How do you think that, having seen the film several times, what's odd is how relatable it is. Those awkward feelings don't necessarily go away.
No,
yes,
they absolutely don't. Yeah.
It may not be a pool party, but maybe it's giving a presentation.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe it's getting up. You know what I mean? There's different moments where it's like, that like junior high feeling of feeling
I see
awkward.
it everywhere all the time, where I just go like, and people are like, I'm so glad I'm not there. I'm like, have you noticed the way we socialize as adults? Like, it's awkward moments happening all the time.
Yes.
Everyone that meets a new person, or like, and I'm saying we have, screenings of this movie, and then it's like, a little mixer after with 50 people. And it's like, all it is me going and having awkward conversation after awkward conversation. Or every moment is too loaded and awkward and strange. And I'm like, I think our lives are incredibly non-confrontational and awkward, that the drama of our adult lives play out so much smaller than we think they do. And it's like, I'm like, have you ever been to a grocery store and you raise your voice at someone behind you and then your heart pounds for 4 hours later? Like, right. I think that's mostly how things work, which is that, like...
It's that fight or flight response.
Yeah, exactly. Grafting itself onto very small experiences. And I think, like, social anxiety is very, very common. I mean, like... The only people that aren't really socially anxious are the crazy ones that are making the rest of us feel socially anxious. I don't know. It's like, for me, it's, I don't know. I think life is incredibly strange and awkward. And there's so much awkwardness happening all the time that I think we just don't see it. Yeah. So I for me, it's like, I don't think we're away from that at all. Yeah.
Now, the supporting cast is amazing. Not just the characters, the young actors, but the actor who plays the father.
Yeah, Josh Hamilton. Yeah,
he's so. How did that relationship work, and how did you make that seem so organic?
Yeah, I'd loved Josh for a while, so I just loved him and thought he was such a talented and warm, open actor. So he was the one that we rehearsed with. I would rehearse the whole movie with Elsie, just me playing everybody, but he was the only actor that we'd actually rehearse with, because that's the one familiar relationship to her. Everyone else needed to feel new, because it's like people she's not familiar with. But the dinner scene is a scene like that has happened for them 1,000 times in their life. So we ran the scene 1,000 times, so they were both tired of it. Because Kayla is very tired of that situation. But they got to spend some time together. Her and her dad hung out with Josh and went around the city in New York and went go-karting, and just spent time together and got comfortable, because it was just more like, you need to get comfortable enough with Josh where you can be annoyed with him, which is not easy when you're a 13-year-old actor that's excited to be in a movie with another adult actor. You want to think everyone's, you think he's so cool, but it's like, you do not think your dad is cool. So you need to hang around Josh enough to get annoyed with him, which was almost an hour. No, I was kidding. No, but like, yeah, it was good for Josh and her to hang out and get really comfortable together.
That chemistry was just flawless between those two characters.
Thanks.
It really was. I mean, like, I could relate to situations I was with, my parents at that age.
Yeah,
It's just, leave me alone, don't bother me. But yet it's kind of like this.
But don't go away.
Yeah. This seeking approval that it's kind of this just awkward situation where, like, you want independence, but you're not ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, stop talking to me, but drive me to the mall. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
It's like, leave. And I say like their relationship is kind of like, I love you, shut up. I love you, shut up. I love you, shut up. Do you love me? Yes, thank you. You know, that's kind of like the entire movie.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to put it. It really is.
And then the rest of the cast, there's Gabe, who is, I mean, he's awkward. My girlfriend said, I'm Gabe. I'm basically Gabe. I'm a super nerd who's very particular about certain things. That I looked at, I mean, having seen the movie so many times, I'm him. And I got to meet him at one of the,
oh, really? Oh, awesome.
at the after party you had at the junior high. That was a great screening. That was
that
so
was fun. Yeah, the AC broke, so it was a little hot, but yeah.
Yeah, and he kept running into me and kept saying hi. It was the same awkward hi every time. He was so great.
Yeah, he's the best. And his real name is Jake Ryan, which is the character from 16 Candles, which is very funny.
It's so, but I hope we see him in more things. But
yeah, I think he's great.
Was he like? How did you cast these little parts? In every part, I can't think of one that takes the movie. Everything elevates.
Just like seeing a lot of kids, and I would read with all the kids, do scenes with them, and I would know that like I would try to hold them in a type of scene that I thought the movie was going to be, which is just keeping them on their feet, and keeping them light, and then it's like I would do all the scenes with everybody, and then at the very last minute, I'd duck out. I'd be Kayla. I'd play Kayla when I read for when Emily Robinson came in for Olivia or whatever. Then I played Emily when Elsie would read, and then I knew they could kind of hold that scene right, and then at the very end, I just step out and they'd be able to hold a scene together. But I don't know. I had felt like I had a very particular version of just the kind of vibe I wanted for kids in acting, I knew that. That's the thing I felt certain of. Again, like I was very nervous about being a director and all that stuff, but I knew I felt like what I wanted kids to feel like, and I was lucky enough where those kids showed up. It felt like the auditions.
The other standout of the film, the soundtrack is so incredible. The way that music is used in the film is fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. How did that all come together? And in particular, there's a moment where Kayla has a crush on a boy, and there's a music drop that just happens every time. That just it's so perfect. It's
a band called Perturbator, and it's a song called Future Club, which is hilarious. But yeah, the movie's scored. I wrote a temp score for the movie that wasn't good, but it was a placeholder, and I wanted it to be electronic because it's a digital story. She's it's on her phone, so it felt like it should definitely be digital and electronic. And it's and it's the music they listen to. Like her world sonically is electronic, I think. And the original idea was like, okay, what if you can take like the sounds of a pop song, the sounds of a Demi Lovato song, and sort of just abstract those sounds into this, into the format of a score. Or like, what if Trent Reznor was a 13-year-old girl? You know what I mean? That was kind of the original idea. And then I wrote a temp score, and then I stumbled on Anna Meredith, who's this British composer who's classically trained but does electronic music on the side. And she just makes very visceral, big, expressive music that also feels like very human and warm and female like a lot of music in sort of young kids' stories is like mandolins, and it's all cute little
acoustic guitar.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, look at this cute little girl in the world. Look how cute her story is. And it's like, her story's not cute to her. It's not little to her. So the film is just across the board always just trying to be subjective and serve her subjective experience. And her subjective experience of the world is intense. So that's what we just wanted, music that felt intense and sort of try to sync the audience's heart rate with hers.
I mean, that's what just kept recurring in the film for me, is how the small moments are big moments. Just talking to someone at that age, especially talking to someone that you're,
trying to
impress a popular girl, and the awkwardness of being invited to a birthday party where you're not wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all of that rang.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's like walking into the dungeon, and that's why I always say, like, Harry Potter and these things, which like people think are escapism for kids. I think there's actually realism for kids, that like it captures their lives realistically, that for them their lives feel like walking into a dungeon to slay a dragon or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's how intense their life feels. That's why they gravitate towards fantasy and big dramatic stories, because their life feels dramatic to them, and it is. So could we make a story with their actual life that felt as epic as, Harry Potter or whatever?
Now, the film screened at Sundance, South by Southwest. It's played. You've been at various screenings. What have been the reactions of people? Because I've sat in on a couple of the Q&As, and it's amazing to see how much it resonates with an audience. What do you feel? I mean, I feel like I have an understanding of what you were trying to achieve, but what do you feel like audiences are getting out of it based on their questions and based on their feedback? And I noticed you surrounded at this junior high party by people just asking you questions, which was awesome to see. Yeah, they really want to talk about this movie after.
It's really like the vibe of people in the room that I get the most from. It's like the sounds they're making in the room, which is good. Like I just hear like cringing and groans and laughs and sniffles, and I see. It's fun to see people like literally put their head in their hands or literally like look away from the screen. Like that's what we wanted. We just wanted a movie that was visceral. It felt like an experience. Can you take a 13-year-old girl in 8th grade, and make it into some real experiential thing where it's like, we just wanted to make people feel. And I love movies when you're sweating and oh my God, you can barely look at the screen and you're cringing and then you're laughing or maybe you're crying or scared or all those things. So that's what's been really nice, is just being in the theater and feeling like, it's an experience. I think they're having a journey, which is nice. That's all we kind of wanted. And then, the conversations and the questions have been great. But, the thing I'm most looking for is just like the sound, the little sound in the room as things are watching. What's nice is that like the movie's, what's really nice, I think the movie is like, can be very boisterous and a lot of laughs and big, and then really for a 15-minute stretch is like pin silent, which is nice. That's what watching in the theater when it's sort of in that late second act thing. It really goes very, very quiet. So that's what I like, is the movie's big and loud and also very small and intimate and quiet.
It's in an odd way, it's uncomfortable and enjoyable and relatable.
Yeah, people say that a lot. People say like that was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever watched. I really loved it. Which is not a bad movie. God. But that's what it is. I mean, of course, that's what 8th grade is. It is uncomfortable. It is, squirmy. And I love watching movies like that. I mean, that's a fun thing for me.
Well, it's amazing that a type of film like this is so rare. Mostly kids are spoon-fed these, as you pointed out, the fantasy versions of
themselves, right. which they get. And I like the fantasy movies. I'm saying I love Harry Potter and stuff, but it's like, it's more just like, I don't like the things that are masquerading as honest and they're pretend to be honest. And I'm the dorky girl and I'm the cool girl, and like the only difference is the cool girl's like in a letter jacket or something.
Exactly.
And they're both talking way too well, and they're not, whatever it is. Like, so that's. Like, I think kids can actually handle themselves. You don't have to give them a just aspirational versions of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you going to continue doing stand-up? Is that because this, I feel like this film will be wildly successful. I mean, it's rolling out now, wide in theaters. Is directing going to be your future? Are you going to go back to stand-up?
I'd love to go back to stand-up if I like. Stand-up is a little stressful for me, and I never looked at something like, it's not something I could ever do for my entire life, but directing is. But the problem with directing is like, oh, cool, your passion requires millions of dollars and hundreds of other people. It's like, but yeah, if I have another idea for a movie, I'd love to make a movie. But yeah, I just try to, once this is over, just sit back and try to write again. Just retreat. I'm not a great multitasker. I just try to take it project by project.
So wait, you're saying you don't have like another script like just up your sleeve,
exactly.
like already?
Well,
that's the thing that they tell you to
What's
do,
wrong
right?
with you, slacker?
I know. Well, I know. Next time, Ari Aster's running around doing. He'll make 15 movies by the time I make 2.
And so you're on now this whirlwind tour. Promoting this film with Elsie. What's your relationship with her now that the film is done and she's seen it? I'm curious as to what her reaction is now seeing the film.
She's able to divorce herself from it. I'm saying in terms of like she's able to appreciate it, but also we're just friends. We were friends the whole time. We're just like running around laughing and like making jokes as we're on like Good Morning Charlotte or whatever, like
Right.
radio, like, it's just been fun and silly, and we're just kind of scratching our heads going, this is crazy. We did not think we'd be here when we were making our little movie in Suffern, New York last summer, so we're just trying to enjoy it. But yeah, we're just friends. I mean, really, that's what we are now.
How long was the shoot?
27 days. With 9-hour days because of kids. So there's labor laws where we couldn't work more than 9 hours. Yeah.
So you could actually go and have dinner in an evening.
Yeah, which was nice. The crew really, really appreciated it.
Yeah, it's almost like that's the way that Clint Eastwood likes to work, right? He likes to be home
I heard it's
by
like 10 and 10 to 4 or something insane.
Yeah, that's great. So, in terms of like you mentioned Robert Altman previously, did you look at like other movies in the teen genre that you looked at, like, and also the cinematography? The movie looks beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, it's stunning. It's weird. It captures that world and makes it, I don't know, it just makes it pretty and then also honest.
Yeah, Andrew Wade is my cinematographer is just very talented, and we went into it like wanting to make a digital movie, being like, let's not try to look like film. Let's be digital. Let's let there be some digital noise in the blacks and let it be, push it a little bit, and that was exciting for us to make it feel like we're not that the movie itself kind of, when you start in your videos, which are literally filmed on a MacBook Pro, and I actually had to be down res because they record at 1080 and they're like actually too high def. They don't look good for what I wanted. But to be like, yeah, and the camera we're capturing on is the same as that camera. Just, it's an 8K helium, whatever thing. All right. We shot the red Epic with the helium sensor. Anyway. Catherine Briot's film, Amasor, that was big for us. Marissa Silver made a film called Old Enough. George Washington, David Gordon Green's first film. That film, like, really, that's kids articulating their life like kids. Billy Madison got first grade right. Billy Madison did first grade better than anybody's done first grade. Goonies. Yeah, there's some. But also it was like Saving Private Ryan and The Wrestler and, Woman Under the Influence. It was also going like, I want this movie to not necessarily just have to feel like, but like teen movies. But I would say Amasor and I love movies that treat kids like as vital and interesting characters as adults. It isn't just some little coming of age story. It's like, no, they are. This is about the human condition. This human just happens to be 13.
And did you realize when you were making it that there's a scene where they're doing a drill with guns, a shooter situation, and I remember when first seeing the film, I mean, it was dead silent because these are so recurring. Did you realize when you wrote it that this would now become a national issue?
No, I mean, similar with the backseat thing, that was pre the Me Too movement, but like, it's not like those things haven't existed. I mean, Columbine happened when I was in 5th grade, so that's been with me my whole life. I hope, and I think they are, both of those scenes are in line with the spirit of the movements in terms of, the car scene being, hopefully saying that something doesn't have to be on paper criminal to be traumatic. And then the gun scene basically being like, this is how normalized it is. I mean, this is actually how those drills are just real. They do those drills. The drills are actually worse than what I showed. There is fake blood like I showed, but they usually have blanks, and so we had to take the sound of blanks out because it was like too much for an audience. Especially because the cut, people think it's real, and I didn't want it to be some like psych out. Yeah, just real. I mean, part of it was just trying to realistically portray what the background of their lives were, which it is just like insane, crazy violence. But yeah, that became very, very relevant.
Especially seeing audiences see those scenes. I guess when you wrote them, it wasn't like you were trying to make some kind of statement. This is just part of life.
Yeah, no, I wasn't trying to like hit on hot topic issues or anything. Just these things, yeah.
And now it's just part of our ongoing
discourse. Yeah, but I mean, for kids, I was thinking about it before then. I mean, I wrote this 4 years ago, but I'm saying Columbine happened in 5th grade for me. I was doing bomb drills in high school for kids that were going to blow up the school and send in threats. So like, violence has been a huge part of my school life ever since I was a kid. Well, the threat of violence, the weird phantom of potential violence, which is weird. It's like there's no more bullying. There's no more physical bullying. There's so much less being swirly and having your head shoved in the locker. But there's this sort of phantom of, and at any point, someone's going to kick down the door with a gun and gun everyone down, which is, a weird extreme.
or bully online.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just
So
like
it's
a
like things,
Facebook post. Or
yeah, it's
Instagram.
like everything feels abstracted. Yeah.
Well, Bo Burnham, thank you so much for being
Thanks for
on the
having me,
film.
guys.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the time. Thanks for
And
the time, guys.
The film is so amazing, so
Means a lot.
incredible.
Thank
I want to
you.
encourage everyone to go see it. Opening wide, August
Absolutely.
3rd.
Appreciate it.
8th grade, absolutely one of the best films of the year. Thank you so much for spending time
Thanks for
with
your
us.
time, guys. I appreciate it.
Cool, thank you.
What was in there?
Just sort of my hopes and dreams.
Right.
As always, make sure to share and subscribe to my channel. Gucci!